You step outside, and a sharp breath of cold air hits your face. It's early winter, the sort of chilly bite that makes your skin prickle and your breath turn to mist in front of you. The trees stand bare, a skeletal figure stretching against the sky, their branches shuddering in the wind as though shivering in sympathy with you. You can't help but wonder if they're a little tired of the cold, too. The ground beneath your feet is hard, the first frost of the season having laid its icy claim on the earth. You look down, noting the way your boots crunch on the frozen soil, a sound that, for some reason, makes your teeth ache just a little. Ah, winter, the uninvited guest who shows up every year, barging in with no concern for whether you've finished your preparations. No one asks for it, but everyone gets it. You probably won't make it through this day, don't say you weren't warned. Before we dive deeper into the chill of the season, take a moment to gently ease yourself into this journey. If you're enjoying the soft, sleepy vibe of this tale, consider giving us a thumbs up. Maybe subscribe, so we can keep you company through many more of these slow-paced evenings. And while you're at it, feel free to comment on your location and local time. Let's see if we're all in the same time zone or if you're listening to this from the warm little corner of the world while I paint you a frozen scene from history. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey. You walk along the edge of a village road. It's a time before electricity, before the warmth of central heating. The world feels smaller in the cold, more intimate, like everything is huddling together for warmth. It's not just your breath turning into mist, but the breath of the world around you. You hear the occasional clatter of wooden carts creaking through the snow, the sound of horses' hooves crunching against the frozen ground. It's cold enough that the icicles hanging from the eaves of houses look like jagged teeth, ready to snap off with the next gust of wind. Winter is both a respite and a battle. It's a time of rest, for sure. After the harvest, there's nothing more to do than huddle by the fire and wait for the thaw. But it's also a time of danger. Those icicles might not just look sharp, they might be the reason for someone's fall. And the cold doesn't care if you're ready or not. Here, in the early months of the season, survival depends on just a few things: fire, food, and shelter. You're already thinking about how you're going to keep the fire burning, and how you'll make sure there's enough food to last until spring. It's a delicate balance, getting by without using up too much. Resources are thin this time of year, and you're keenly aware that you won't have the luxury of indulging in any excess. Historians still debate whether medieval people really enjoyed winter. Some argue that it was a time of forced stillness, while others suggest it was an inevitable part of the cycle, one that people simply learned to live with. But one thing is for sure: survival during this time wasn't easy. They didn't have the kind of central heating you're used to, or warm electric blankets. Nope. Instead, there were thick walls, woolen blankets, and the occasional fire. You see a small house in the distance, and as you approach, you feel the warmth radiating through the thin gaps in the wooden door. It's a simple hut, nothing fancy, nothing too extravagant, but it promises refuge from the chill. You pull the door open slowly, and a rush of warmth embraces you like an old friend. The hearth crackles with life, and the smell of burning wood fills your nostrils. The room is dark, lit only by the flickering light of the fire. You can hear the quiet hum of a life lived at the edges of survival. The people who lived in these times were no strangers to the struggle against winter. They fought back with every tool at their disposal. If there's one thing that makes the medieval winter experience truly unique, it's the fire. You won't find any modern gas or electric heaters here. It's all about gathering logs, tending the flames, and praying the fire doesn't go out. You can almost hear them saying, "Well, at least the fire won't judge you for not cleaning your room." Obscure bit of trivia for you: in medieval England, they had a special day known as Candlemas, which fell on February 2nd, right in the middle of the harshest part of winter. It was said that if the weather was fair on this day, it meant the worst of winter was over. If it was cloudy, however, the cold would drag on. Yes, Candlemas, not quite a weather forecast, but it sure made things a little more fun to think about. Now, as you sit by the fire, you can't help but feel that sense of comfort and relief, the warmth on your face, the fire crackling beside you, and the knowledge that you've made it through another day. But tomorrow? Well, tomorrow is another battle, and you, like the people before you, will continue to find ways to survive, one day at a time. The fire is crackling softly, and you're finally starting to feel the warmth seep into your bones. It's nice, isn't it? That gentle shift from the cold grip of winter to the cozy embrace of your home. But don't get too comfortable. In this world, nothing stays easy for long. You can already feel the weight of the next challenge pressing down on your shoulders. The heat might be a welcome relief, but the cold still lingers just outside the door, waiting for its next chance to creep in. The day has only just begun, and already, there's work to do. You don't have time to relax. There are still animals to feed, firewood to chop, and food to prepare. Winter doesn't wait for anyone. In fact, if you don't make the most of these few daylight hours, you might find yourself without enough for the days ahead. You move towards the back of the house, where the kitchen is. Its humble, wooden counters, a few pots hanging from the wall, and a simple stone hearth where meals are prepared. Nothing flashy. No modern conveniences. Just the basics. You're aware of how much you rely on these tools, the hearth, the knives, the wooden spoons. And you can't help but notice that, just like the people before you, you'll be spending much of your day tending to the essentials of survival. The hustle is real. In a world where food is a luxury, every scrap counts. You'll be eating a lot of dried meat and salted fish. There's not much fresh produce around here, unless you've got some root vegetables left over from the harvest. You know that whatever you eat today is going to carry you through until tomorrow, and maybe even longer. Each meal is a reminder that winter doesn't care if you're ready or not. Now, a little piece of odd history for you. Did you know that medieval Europeans believed that eating a warming food like a hot stew or a roasted meat would help you stay warm in the cold months? It's true. The concept of heating or cooling foods was a big part of their thinking, even if it sounds a bit odd to us today. So, when you sit down for a hearty meal in the warmth of your home, just know that there's a long history behind that idea, probably nothing to do with actual warmth, but it might make you feel a little better about that second helping. You continue through the day, chopping wood, tending to your animals, checking on the store of dried grains and root vegetables. Time moves slowly in the winter. There's something peaceful about it, really. Everything is quieter, more subdued. The days are shorter, and you've got fewer distractions. But it's not all rest. There's work to be done, and if you don't do it now, you'll pay the price later. As the sun dips below the horizon, the cold begins to creep back in, despite the fire. You know the drill by now: layer up, seal off the cracks in the windows, and huddle close to the hearth. The night stretches on, and sleep comes slowly, as you listen to the wind howl outside and the occasional crack of wood in the fire. Tomorrow will be another long day. But for now, you close your eyes, letting the warmth of the fire lull you into a much-needed sleep. You awake in the dim light of early morning, the fire still burning low in the hearth, casting faint, flickering shadows around the room. The cold, although tucked just beyond the walls, is creeping ever closer, the chill seeping through even the smallest cracks. The world outside is still asleep, save for the wind, which howls its complaints about the unrelenting season. Your body stirs, sluggish but familiar with the need to get moving. There's no time for lounging in the comfort of the warmth, no matter how tempting it might be. You rise and stretch, your muscles aching just a little from the weight of yesterday's work. It's funny how you've gotten used to that ache, how it's become part of the rhythm of life. You've learned to live with the wear and tear, the slow grind of survival. And today? Well, today will be no different. As you gather your things, whatever tools you'll need for the day, you're reminded of the most pressing issue you'll face: hunger. The cold season brings with it many trials, but hunger is perhaps the most persistent of them all. The food you've stored away is not going to last forever, and with every passing day, you feel the strain of rationing. The salt-cured meats, the dried fish, the root vegetables, they're all dwindling. You'll need to stretch them as far as you can, which means making the most of every morsel. But it's not just the food that's in short supply, it's the warmth that comes with it. You sit down at the table to eat your breakfast, if you can even call it that, and you realize that every bite is a small victory, a reminder of just how far you've come. It's not much, some bread, a small sliver of salted meat, maybe a dried apple, but this time, it's a feast. You've grown accustomed to this kind of meal, the simplicity of it, the quiet satisfaction. It's what you've got, and you're learning to make do. Historians still debate how medieval people managed to endure hunger during these long winters. It's believed that many families relied heavily on the preservation of food, salted, smoked, or dried to survive. Yet, some argue that the quality of life in these dark months was not quite as miserable as we imagine. After all, people knew how to survive. They had no choice but to make do. They adapted. And yet, we have to remember the harshness of the situation. When you're low on food, every scrap feels like a treasure. Every meal is carefully planned and measured. And if you're lucky enough to have a bit of extra food, it's not something you take for granted. The long hours of darkness stretch out before you, and as you sit there, eating your humble breakfast, you can't help but think about the days ahead. It's a simple reality that no amount of medieval bravado can make disappear. Food is a luxury, and its scarcity is a constant companion. Here's an interesting tidbit for you: the concept of hunger stones in Central Europe during medieval times. These stones, often engraved with dates and inscriptions, were placed in rivers during particularly dry or harsh winters as a warning to future generations. They mark times of extreme drought or famine. It's a little reminder that when things got tough, people didn't just endure, they left messages, even if those messages were about how desperately awful things had gotten. You feel the gnawing of hunger deep in your stomach, but it's nothing new. You're not alone in this, everyone in the village is in the same boat. It's a collective struggle, and somehow that makes it easier to bear. There's no shame in it, Just a quiet acceptance that this is what winter demands of you. You're part of something much bigger than your own survival. As the day stretches on, you make your way to the village square, the cold wind nipping at your cheeks. The usual morning bustle is more subdued now, a little slower, as if everyone is feeling the weight of the season. People walk with purpose, heads down, eyes scanning the ground for whatever they can find. If you have a good hunting day, you might be lucky enough to bring home a rabbit or some wild fowl. But those are rare finds, and you know better than to count on them. Instead, you focus on what's within reach, the preservation of what you've got, the careful rationing of your supplies. You catch a glimpse of your neighbor, an older man with a crooked back and gnarled hands, pulling a cart of root vegetables behind him. His face is pinched from the cold, his eyes narrowed against the wind. You nod in recognition, but he's too absorbed in his work to return the greeting. No one has the energy for pleasantries in winter. There's work to do, and work means survival. And that's the crux of it, isn't it? Every moment of your day is spent in service to survival. Every task, from gathering firewood to making sure the livestock are fed, is an effort to ensure you make it through to the next day. There's a certain poetry in it, the slow, steady rhythm of life that matches the pacing of the seasons. And yet, despite the simplicity, you can't escape the tension, the urgency that hums beneath the surface. Winter is a waiting game, a test of endurance, and sometimes, it feels like a long, drawn-out battle with the inevitable. You settle in for the evening, your stomach still heavy with the remnants of a small meal, but your mind is clear. Tomorrow is another day of hard work, of stretching what you've got. It's not glamorous, and it's certainly not easy, but it's life. And life, in all its simplicity, is the most important thing you can hold on to right now. Night falls quickly, the daylight hours so brief that they hardly seem to matter. The fire crackles softly in the hearth, the warmth of it pushing back against the chill that creeps into every corner of the house. You're not alone in the quiet, the world is still, the kind of stillness that only comes in winter. The wind howls outside, a reminder that the cold never fully lets go, never gives you the luxury of forgetting for too long. As you sit by the fire, you feel the weight of the day slowly lifting from your shoulders. The world outside feels distant, almost unreachable, and for a moment, you let yourself forget the cold and the hunger, the work still ahead. It's just you and the warmth, the firelight flickering in the dark, casting shadows that dance along the walls like ghosts of past winters. You can't help but smile softly at the quiet. In this moment, it's easy to forget that the world outside is filled with struggle. Inside, here in this space, there's peace. The night stretches on, and with it, the promise of another day. Historians still argue about how people in medieval times viewed the passage of time, especially during winter. Some suggest that the long nights made people feel like life was suspended in a kind of stasis, while others believe that the quiet allowed for deep reflection, a sort of stillness that invited people to think. Whatever the case, the nights were long, and they were all the more real for it. You feel your eyelids growing heavier as you settle deeper into the chair. The world outside might be cold and unforgiving, but here, in this small refuge, you can almost forget the long months ahead. Almost, you wake to the soft glow of the fire, the warmth already beginning to leave your body. It's a strange thing, the way warmth can slip away when you're not paying attention, how quickly the cold takes over again. You rise, stretching and yawning, the frost still clinging to the windows like a stubborn reminder that the world outside has no intention of letting up. Winter is here to stay. As you step outside, the wind hits you like a slap to the face. It's sharp, biting, and immediately you're reminded that you're a small part of a much larger world, a world that doesn't care much for your personal comfort. You pull your cloak tighter around you, the wool scratching against your skin. It's a familiar feeling, one you've come to accept as part of the rhythm of the season. It's not the cold that gets to you so much as the relentless persistence of it. Day after day, it's there, never relenting, always pushing you to the edge. Today, your task is to gather firewood. It's not glamorous, but it's essential. Without it, you wouldn't last long. The world outside is full of resources, sure, but those resources come with their own price. The trees are sparse this far north, and it can take hours to find the right kind of wood, dry, seasoned, and ready for burning. If you don't get enough, you'll be back out here in a few days, risking frostbite, working the same ground over and over, hoping for just a little more. You walk along the edge of the forest, the trees standing tall and silent, their bare branches reaching for the sky like the hands of the desperate. You can't help but notice how much they resemble the people who lived through these winters, sturdy, tough, and resolute, but often feeling like they could snap under the pressure. The forest holds a certain quiet power. It's as though the trees themselves understand what you're going through. The wind howls again, tugging at your cloak, making it flap in the breeze like a ragged flag. You curse under your breath, adjusting the straps that hold the wood to your back. There's something oddly comforting about this constant struggle against nature. It's tiring, yes, and you sometimes wish for a day when you could sleep in, when you wouldn't have to get up at dawn to brave the cold. But here, in the woods, you remember something important. People have always had to fight against the elements. Winter is just the latest battleground, and it's been here long before you, and it'll be here long after you're gone. Historians often debate whether medieval people saw winter as a time of rest or a time of battle. Some suggest that the long nights and the isolation allowed for reflection, and even spiritual growth. Others claim it was simply a time to survive, a time to endure and wait for spring. The truth, of course, is likely somewhere in between. There was time for rest, yes, but there was also the reality of survival. And survival, as you know, requires constant effort. A strange fact for you to ponder: in medieval times, there was a peculiar belief that the cold breath of winter could actually keep disease away. The idea was that the frost and the cold air would purify the land, removing any lingering sickness or bad spirits. It's an odd thought, perhaps a little naive, but it speaks to the ways in which people tried to find comfort in the face of nature's harshness. They made peace with the things they couldn't control by weaving stories and beliefs around them, trying to shape the chaos into something they could understand. You finally find a decent stack of wood, and as you load it onto your back, you feel a moment of triumph. It's small, yes, but it's something. Every task completed is a victory. The cold might be biting at your heels, the wind might be relentless, but for today, you've won. As you turn to make your way back to the warmth of your home, you can't help but feel that familiar sense of pride. The work is never easy, but it's work that means survival. By the time you return to the house, the day has already started to fade into evening. You can feel the chill creeping back into your bones, despite the warmth of the fire inside. You unload the firewood, stoking the flames to make sure they'll last through the night. The fire, in its own quiet way, is a reminder of the battle you've just won. The heat from it doesn't just warm your body, it warms your soul, too, in a way that only fire can. The small, constant flame is a symbol of persistence in a world that doesn't give up easily. The night stretches out before you like an endless horizon, the cold air pushing against the thin walls of your home. Inside, the fire crackles softly, casting dancing shadows across the room. You sit by the hearth, staring into the flames, lost in thought. The world outside is cold and dark, but in here, there's warmth, there's safety. You let your mind wander to thoughts of spring, though you know it's still a long way off. It's funny, the way time feels different in winter. The days are shorter, the nights longer. It's as though the seasons are playing a cruel trick on you, stretching out the time between now and the first signs of life returning to the world. You know the moment will come, the buds will bloom, the days will grow longer, and the sun will warm the earth once again. But it seems so far away. And in a way, it's not just the world outside that feels like it's waiting, it's you, too. The wait for spring is long and slow, a kind of suspended animation that leaves you with nothing but your thoughts to pass the time. There's something almost meditative about it. You've grown used to the quiet, to the slow rhythm of life in winter. But the waiting can wear on you. It's a time of patience, sure, but also a time of uncertainty. The cold is unrelenting, and the hunger still gnaws at your stomach, no matter how much you tell yourself it's just a part of the cycle. And yet, you survive. People always do. It's in your nature. The promise of spring is enough to keep you going, even when the days feel impossibly long and the nights stretch on forever. An interesting tidbit to consider, the medieval concept of hunger was far different from what we think of today. While we associate hunger with the pangs of an empty stomach, medieval people believed hunger was both a physical and spiritual malady. If you were hungry, it wasn't just your body that was affected, it was your very soul. This belief made the act of eating feel even more significant. It wasn't just about survival, it was about maintaining a connection to the divine. It's strange to think about, especially as you sit by your fire, waiting for spring to come. But the people of these times had a way of turning even the harshest realities into something more meaningful. As you sit there, watching the fire flicker and fade, you feel a strange sense of calm. The cold outside may be harsh, but here, by the hearth, you're safe. You've made it through another day. The world may be waiting for spring, but for now, the fire is enough. And tomorrow? Well, tomorrow will come, just as surely as the seasons change. The wind continues its unyielding howls outside, but inside, the warmth from the fire's a small but persistent victory. It's dark now, the only light coming from the flickering heart that casts a calming glow over the room. You find yourself settling into a familiar routine, checking on the fire, tending to the few animals you've been able to keep alive, and then simply existing in the quiet of the winter night. It's not glamorous, but there's a comfort in it, a rhythm that you've grown accustomed to over the years. As you sit there, lost in the steady crackle of the fire, you begin to reflect on the social web that holds your community together. No man, or woman, is an island, after all, especially in times of hardship. Medieval winters weren't just about individual survival. They were a test of community. Everyone had a role to play, whether they were the ones out gathering wood, curing meats, or simply offering company to those who couldn't venture out. The village, small as it may be, was a lifeline. It wasn't just the heat from the fire that kept people going, it was the connection to each other. You think about the neighbor who helped you gather firewood a few days ago, and the elderly woman who offered you her last piece of bread when you were short on supplies last winter. There's a certain unspoken understanding in these small acts of kindness, a recognition that everyone is fighting the same battle. Winter is a cruel, indifferent force, and survival is not something you can do alone. The knowledge that others are facing the same struggles, and that you're in this together, makes it all a little more bearable. Historians often remark on the importance of social networks in medieval times. The isolation of the winter months forced people to rely heavily on one another for survival, not just for material needs like food and shelter, but for emotional support as well. The village was a tight-knit group, and this communal bond was essential for enduring the long, hard months of winter. If one person faltered, the whole village suffered. It was as much about shared effort as it was about shared suffering. People had to make sure their neighbors were doing well, because no one could afford to let anyone slip through the cracks. Here's an odd little tidbit for you. In some medieval villages, there was a practice known as the Feast of Fools. Though it wasn't a winter-specific tradition, it was a time when the usual social order was turned upside down. Peasants would dress as lords, and lords would dress as peasants. There was laughter, revelry, and a lot of mockery of the social hierarchy. In a way, it was the community's way of coping with the crushing weight of their reality. Sometimes, the best way to survive hard times is by turning them into a joke. You find yourself smiling slightly at the thought of those madcap moments, imagining the solemn lord trying to wear a peasant's patched coat, his stiff collar sticking out awkwardly. It's easy to imagine these small moments of laughter amidst the struggle, the absurdity of it all somehow making the hardship easier to bear. As you glance around your own small space, you feel that unspoken bond of the community, even in the quiet. The village outside may be asleep, but it's still alive with the shared pulse of survival. You know that if you need help tomorrow, someone will be there. And if you can offer a little assistance in return, you will. That's how it works. But beyond the social ties, there's a deeper layer to this survival. The harsh realities of winter force people to consider their mortality. The cold months are a reminder that life is fragile. One wrong step, one missed meal, and you could find yourself at the mercy of the season. It's in these moments, when the cold is most unforgiving, that people come to realize just how important their community really is. Without it, winter would be unbearable. And so, you let the fire warm your bones, and you let the peace of your little corner of the world settle in. You're part of something bigger than yourself, and in the face of such a harsh season, that connection is your greatest strength. As the night deepens and the wind outside picks up, you find yourself staring into the fire, feeling the deep stillness that comes with the long winter nights. It's a kind of quiet that wraps itself around you like a blanket, a soft, suffocating silence that makes you feel both small and large at the same time. In this stillness, there's a strange kind of comfort, a quiet acceptance of the world's rhythms. The cold is still there, knocking at the door, but it doesn't feel as threatening now, not when the fire is so warm. You let your thoughts drift, pondering the resilience of the people who have lived through these winters for centuries. The men and women who braved the cold, who fought against the elements, who found ways to endure even when it seemed like nature itself was determined to destroy them. These were people who understood the fragility of life. They knew that survival wasn't guaranteed, that every winter was a gamble, and that you didn't always win. But they kept going, year after year, because survival was all they had. It's said that human beings are remarkably adaptable. We're able to find ways to endure even the harshest conditions. And perhaps that's why we're still here. Still living through winters, still facing the same battles that our ancestors did. The cold might change, the tools might evolve, but the struggle remains the same. It's the resilience of the human spirit that carries us through. In medieval times, that resilience took many forms. People made the most of what they had, used every scrap, every opportunity, to keep the fire burning and the food on the table. It wasn't glamorous, and it wasn't always easy, but it was necessary. And perhaps, in the end, that's what makes it so remarkable. The simple fact that they kept going. There's a kind of beauty in that perseverance, even if it's not the kind of beauty that's celebrated in the grand histories of kings and battles. The real stories are the ones lived by the everyday people who just kept going, despite the odds. A small historical tidbit here, Medieval people believed that certain rituals could protect them from the harshness of winter. One of these rituals involved placing a bowl of water outside the door on Christmas Eve, in the hopes that it would freeze overnight. If it froze solid, it was considered a good omen, a sign that the winter would be mild. It's a curious little piece of folklore, isn't it? The kind of superstition that makes you smile and shake your head, but also makes you wonder what people back then thought the world was really about. Tonight, as you sit by your fire, you can't help but feel the weight of that resilience in your bones. Winter might be cold and harsh, but it's not unbeatable. You'll make it through, just as countless others have done before you. Tomorrow will come, and with it, another chance to keep going, to keep surviving. And somehow, that's enough. You wake to the same frost-covered windows, the early light creeping in from the edge of the horizon, soft and hesitant. It's another day, another stretch of cold to endure. The fire still burns low in the hearth, and for a brief moment, the warmth makes the chill of the room feel distant. But just as quickly, the cold seeps in around you, a reminder that the respite is fleeting. You glance outside. The world is still, quiet, frozen. The snow lies in thick blankets over the ground, unmoving, stubborn. The wind, though quieter than last night, still shifts in the trees. The cold is relentless, and though the days are slowly lengthening, it's still too early to hope for the warmth of spring. But there's something different today. Something small, but significant. You can feel it in the air, an almost imperceptible shift, like the earth is holding its breath, preparing for change. It's as if the cold itself knows that it's nearing its end, that the long winter is finally ready to give way to the warmth it's been holding back for so long. The days are growing longer, you notice. And with each passing one, the world begins to shift just a little. The sun, though still low in the sky, stays longer. The shadows begin to retreat earlier in the evening, as if time itself is stretching out, becoming more generous. It's funny how time seems to move differently in winter. The months drag on, yet somehow, they seem to slip away, too. You've been living with this cold for so long, the rhythm of it is almost second nature. But the slow, steady change in the air, a slight easing of the chill, is enough to make you sit up straighter, to remind you that the world isn't always so unforgiving. It's a subtle shift, but it's there. The simple fact is that survival doesn't just mean making it through each cold day. It's about reaching the point where you can feel the change coming. And right now, you can feel it. The earth might be frozen, but it's waiting. It's ready. And so are you. It's this slow march toward thaw that has always defined the end of winter. The thaw doesn't happen all at once. It's like an old man stretching his stiff joints after too long of being curled up in bed. It takes time. The first real warmth comes, and it's enough to make you breathe a little easier, to stop thinking so much about the cold. The ice begins to loosen its grip on the land, and for the first time in what feels like ages, you step outside and take in the air and, yes, it's just a little warmer. A tiny whisper of spring. You might find yourself standing still for a moment, letting that new air rush in. The trees are still bare, but the promise is there. You're not there yet, not by any means. But you've survived another winter, and soon, the world will wake up. You'll feel the grass beneath your feet again, see the first buds break open, and the birds will return to fill the sky with songs you've longed to hear. But even now, even as you stand there, feeling that faint promise of spring, you can't help but think back to all that's gotten you here. The people, the cold nights by the fire, the shared silence with your neighbors, and the quiet, unspoken understanding that this was survival. You made it through another winter, and in the face of it all, the human spirit remains unbroken. Historians still debate whether the medieval people of Northern Europe truly understood the cyclical nature of seasons. They couldn't have known, of course, what we understand about the tilt of the earth and the predictable patterns of weather. But they had their own way of interpreting the slow return of warmth. Some believed in omens, signs in the sky and earth that foretold the changing seasons. And whether they understood it scientifically or spiritually, they knew that winter always ended, even if it seemed like it would never come to an end. Here's a quirky little fact: in the Middle Ages, some cultures believed that seeing a spring frost was actually a good omen. It symbolized a hard yet fruitful year ahead. A spring frost, after all, was just the Earth's way of shaking off the long winter, a final reminder of the cold before the warmth arrived. Oddly comforting, don't you think? As you turn back to your fire, feeling the heat seep back into your bones, you realize that this moment, this tiny shift, is enough to keep you going. It's not spring yet, but it's coming. And for now, that's all you need to know. The days continued to stretch out slowly, each one a little bit warmer, a little bit brighter. The air, though still cool in the mornings, no longer has the biting edge it once did. The world outside seems to have shrugged off the worst of the winter, and though you can't quite say spring has arrived, you can feel the shift deep in your bones. You step outside, and for the first time in months, the earth beneath your feet doesn't crunch with ice and snow. It feels soft again, pliable, as though it's ready to wake up. The trees, still bare, seem a little less grim now, the bark less forbidding. There's a hint of green just starting to peek through the soil. You look around and breathe deeply, feeling the world expanding around you. The air smells fresh, like rain or the first flowers to bloom. But even as the warmth begins to creep in, there's something in your chest that stays calm, like the echo of a memory from the long, hard winter. It's the understanding that the battle with the cold isn't truly over, not completely. The frost may be fading, but the experience of it lingers, like the taste of something bitter long after it's gone. Historians often reflect on how the medieval winter shaped the resilience of people in these harsh climates. There's something remarkable in the way they endured, in how they held on through the darkest, coldest months. It wasn't just about surviving, it was about living through the worst, and emerging stronger for it. Even as the frost melts away and spring inches closer, the strength of those who endured these winters remains, a quiet, enduring legacy. You take one last look at the thawing world around you, the first hints of green breaking through the earth, and let out a slow breath. Winter may be over, but the memory of it will stay with you, just as it stays with everyone who has ever had to face it. The fire flickers softly beside you, the last embers glowing warm and steady. As the days grow longer and the warmth returns, you realize that surviving this winter, like all the others before it, isn't just about making it through. It's about living, despite the cold, despite the hunger, despite the endless wait for the first signs of spring. And as you let yourself settle into the warmth of the moment, you can't help but smile softly. Another winter conquered. The earth is waking up. And so are you.